They called her a monster, but the human held her hand and asked her name. The Helix sector's debris field stretched for 300,000 kilometers, metal and frozen atmosphere catching the distant star's light like broken glass. Ethan Reeves guided his salvage vessel through the wreckage, fingers dancing across controls worn smooth by a decade of use. The Perchance's sensors painted radiation signatures red where reactor cores had breached, thermal ghosts marking where crew compartments had vented 3 weeks ago. Active beacon at 27 Mark IV, vessel announced. Kethran origin. Ethan's hand hesitated. Kethrans didn't use distress beacons. They didn't take prisoners or call for help. The species that had glassed New Bellum didn't understand surrender. Distance? 400 meters, inside a Corvette, structural integrity at 30%. The Corvette looked like something had hatched from within, jagged tears radiating from where an explosion had peeled back armor. But Kethran Tech could fund a month of repairs, maybe replace his failing coolant system. Ethan maneuvered closer, magnetic clamps locking onto torn hull. His suit sealed with practiced efficiency, and the boarding tunnel extended with a hiss. Then he was inside, helmet lights cutting through darkness, thick with frozen particles. The beacon led deeper, past corridors twisted by decompression. The airlock at the Corvette's core still had power, emergency lighting painting everything red. Ethan's breath caught when his light found her. She was sealed inside the chamber, body pressed against transparent panel with one arm bent wrong. Blue-gray skin showed darker burns across her shoulder and ribs, rebreather mask cracked. But her eyes were open, luminous gold-orange, with vertical pupils tracking him with fading focus. Alive. Every instinct screamed to leave. But her hand pressed weakly against the panel, blood seeping from the gash along her ribs. Recommend immediate withdrawal, vessel crackled. Subject may be feigning incapacity. Ethan stared at the woman behind glass. Her lips moved, trying to form words the broken rebreather couldn't carry. Her eyes held something he recognized, the exhausted acceptance of someone out of options. He pulled emergency sealant from his belt before thinking it through. The foam expanded into the rebreather's cracks, and he watched her chest rise as she drew a full breath. This violates every protocol regarding hostile species contact. Yeah, he cycled the airlock slowly. Log it as temporary salvage. Getting her back to the Perchance took 20 minutes, her weight solid as he half-carried her through the tunnel. When he sealed her in the cargo bay and locked the bulkhead, she slumped against the far wall, watching through the camera with those golden eyes. He just brought a Kethran onto his ship, a species responsible for his sister's death, for burning colonies, for starting an endless war. The medical scanner took 4 hours to calibrate, data pulled from military databases. Her broken arm needed setting, the burns required treatment he didn't have. He worked through the service drawer, passing supplies without entering, watching as she accepted each item with careful deliberation. When she finally spoke, her voice came through the intercom rough but precise. Why did you not kill me while I was helpless? Ethan leaned against the bulkhead. I'm a salvager, not a soldier, and I need to know what happened before I decide what to do with you. Silence stretched. He cataloged details on the monitor, horns curving from her temples, crimson hair like spilled wine against deck plating, eyes that never stopped tracking threats. My name is Cirith. I led a mutiny against my ship's captain. When it failed, my crew voted to space me rather than execute me cleanly. Suffocating was punishment for showing mercy. Mercy. The word tasted strange. Kethrans don't do mercy. No, we do not. I attempted to prevent the sterilization of a human colony station. My captain ordered full bombardment. I refused. 47 crew agreed. 112 did not. Ethan's chest tightened. Which station? Your military designation was New Bellum. 2,000 civilians present. When my mutiny failed, the captain ordered destruction anyway, but the delay allowed most to evacuate. 1,700 survived. The control room tilted. New Bellum, where Sarah worked in hydroponics teaching refugee children to grow tomatoes. The Kethrans had hit it 3 months ago, and he'd spent weeks searching casualty lists before accepting she was gone. Except she wasn't, because this woman had staged a mutiny. My sister lived there, Sarah Reeves' agricultural section. Sirith's eyes closed briefly. I do not know individual names, but if she evacuated, I am pleased my actions were not without effect. Ethan slid down the bulkhead, plasma cutter digging into his hip. The woman in his cargo bay had saved his sister's life, and her people had left her to die for it. How long until you heal? Days for the bones, longer for full combat efficiency. She paused. You have questions. Yeah, but first I'm going to sleep, because I haven't in 30 hours. Then we figure out what happens next. He didn't mention the bounty posted on salvage networks. 50,000 credits could save his failing business. Didn't mention that every instinct said to space her or sell her. Instead, he left supplies in the drawer and watched on the monitor as she treated her wounds with the precision of someone trained for self-sufficiency. 2 days passed in careful distance. Sirith remained confined while Ethan maintained the ship, leaving supplies like she was radioactive. He watched her heal with disturbing speed on the security feed, bones knitting faster than human physiology allowed. Caught himself observing longer than necessary when she moved through combat forms. Her movements were hypnotic, sharp, lethal, precise. Bioluminescent markings pulsed faintly along her cheekbones when she exerted herself, patterns he couldn't stop watching. On the 4th day, Vessel detected 3 ships burning toward their position. Human mercenary vessels broadcasting on corporate frequencies demanding Ethan surrender the Kethran fugitive for full salvage rights to her corvette, plus a 50,000 credit bounty. Ethan stared at the numbers, enough to replace his failing engines, buy 6 months of supply contracts. Sirith watched through the cargo bay camera with an expression he was learning to read as resignation. What happens if the Kethrans find you first? She drew one finger across her throat, the motion casual enough to show she'd already accepted this outcome. Ethan made his decision by not making one. He told the mercenaries his transponder was malfunctioning, that he needed 6 hours to verify his cargo's identity, buying time while he plotted a jump to the Cray Nebula's interference fields. Why are you protecting me when the bounty could save your business? Because I'm tired of being the kind of person who puts a price on someone who showed mercy when it cost her everything. She went very still, then extended one hand through the service window, not aggressive, just offered. After a long moment, Ethan reached out and let her fingers close around his wrist, her skin surprisingly warm and smooth against his own. As he prepped the jump drive, 3 Kethran hunter-killers dropped out of FTL ahead of the mercenaries, weapons hot and scans locked on the perchance. Ethan triggered an emergency burn that redlined every system while Sirith braced in the cargo bay. The jump was catastrophically rough, knocking out their navigation computer and sending them tumbling into the nebula's electromagnetic chaos. When Ethan regained control, blood ran from his nose and his hands shook. He found Sirith pressed against the cargo bay door, asking through the intercom if he was injured, her voice carrying something like fear. They'd crossed some invisible line where her survival became tangled with his own. Stranded in the Cray Nebula with a dead navigation computer, Ethan unsealed the cargo bay. He needed Sirith's help identifying which salvage components might work as replacements. She moved through the cramped corridors with careful precision, conscious of her horns in the low ceilings. When she examined Sarah's photograph on the control panel, she asked about human family bonds. We're not raised communally, Ethan said, pulling access panels. Sarah was my younger sister. Kethran hatchlings are raised in cohorts, Sirith said. Individual attachment compromises unit cohesion. Does it work? She was quiet. I hesitated. My crew is dead because I valued human lives over my captain's orders. Perhaps the doctrine is correct. Or perhaps it's bullshit. You saved 1,700 people. The repair work forced proximity that would have been unthinkable days ago. Ethan braced against her shoulder for leverage, her breath warm against his neck. His fingers caught in her crimson hair while guiding her hands through delicate wiring. She learned he talked to himself when concentrating. He learned she had unexpected talent for improvisation. Try routing power through the secondary junction, she suggested. Kethran vessels use redundant pathways. That's not in the schematics I pulled. Your military intelligence is incomplete. We do not share design specifications with species we are attempting to exterminate. The dark humor startled a laugh from him. Her luminous eyes tracked the sound like she was cataloging a new phenomenon. 6 hours later, they jury-rigged a functional navigation system. Ethan wiped grease from his hands while Cirith examined their work with professional appreciation. Inefficient, she said, but elegant in its desperation. Vessel crackled through the speakers, navigation operational at 63% capacity. Ethan pulled up star charts. Refuge station is 2 weeks out, neutral territory, you could disappear there. 2 weeks in close quarters. I'll sleep in the cargo bay if you want the quarters. Unnecessary, the cargo bay's temperature is adequate. She paused. You have been afraid of me since you found me, but you act against that fear. Why? Ethan leaned against the console. Fear and trust aren't opposites. You could hurt me, but you choose not to. That choice matters more than your capacity for violence. Her bioluminescent markings pulsed once. Kethran philosophy states that capability defines threat level. Your logic is alien. So is not killing people when ordered to. They fell into unexpected routine over the following days. Ethan taught her navigation by stellar currents, showing her how to feel the nebula's flow instead of computing it. Cirith shared combat meditation techniques that helped his insomnia. She was fascinated by his repairs, the way he named components and talked to them. Why do you call this junction Martha? Because she's temperamental. Reminds me of my ex-wife. You were pair bonded? Married, past tense. She wanted someone stable, planetside. One evening, Ethan fell asleep at the pilot's console. He woke to find a blanket draped over his shoulders and Cirith back in the cargo bay, moving through combat forms like she hadn't just done something inexplicably gentle. On the 8th night, a nightmare yanked him awake. Sarah's face burning, station corridors venting, he lurched upright and found Cirith crouched outside his door. I heard distress through the bulkhead. I was uncertain if humans prefer company or solitude during nightmares. He opened the door wider. Company's fine. They sat on the floor while he talked about New Bellum, about waiting for casualty lists, about anger that had nowhere to go. Cirith listened without offering empty comfort, then spoke about the first time she killed someone. A human colonist protecting children during a raid. That questioning began my doubt, she said. When the New Bellum orders came, I had already decided I could no longer follow commands that treated mercy as weakness. I thought about selling your location to those mercenaries. The confession emerged before he could stop it. 50,000 credits would have saved my business. She went very still, golden eyes fixed on him, the silence stretched. Would you make the same choice now? No, you stopped being cargo. You're the first person in 5 years I actually give a damn about. Cirith made a sound he'd never heard, something between a sigh and a breath. She reached out slowly and touched his face with the back of her hand, tentative. Kethrans do not have romance or courtship, she said quietly. Only breeding contracts and strategic alliances. I have no framework for what I feel when you fall asleep within reach, trusting me despite knowing what I am. His hand covered hers. Her skin was warm, smooth. We'll figure it out. Vessel's alert klaxon shattered the moment. They reached the control room together. Captain Marwick's face filled the screen. Hard features, one prosthetic eye too blue. Salvager Reeves. Final offer. Surrender the Kethran fugitive, collect your bounty, and walk away clean. Or I start killing refugees at Refuge Station until someone gives her up. 12 hours. I've attached dossiers on 3 families with children, just so you know whose blood you're choosing. The transmission cut. Files populated the screen, names, faces, children who'd lost everything to war. Cirith reached for the communication panel. I will transmit my location. The deaths of innocents are unacceptable. Ethan grabbed her wrist. Your sentimentality will cost lives. Then I'll find another way. They argued, voices rising. Cirith tried to move him aside without hurting him, her strength obvious. They ended up pressed together in the narrow corridor, her hands flat against his chest, his fingers around her wrists, both breathing hard. Humans are either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, she said. No Kethran would sacrifice strategic advantage for emotional attachment. Maybe that's why your species is so damn lonely. He made his decision, plotted coordinates deeper into the nebula far from refuge, transmitted them to Marwick claiming engine failure, requesting 6 more hours, buying time with a lie that might get people killed. Cirith watched him, luminous eyes reflecting screen light. Why are you doing this? Because I'm tired of being the kind of person who chooses easy over right, and because losing you would be worse than losing the ship. Her expression shifted. She leaned forward and rested her forehead against his, a gesture he suspected held significance. Your species confuses me, she said softly, but I am beginning to understand why my captain feared you. The weight of Ethan's lie sat between them as they navigated toward refuge station, both aware he'd endangered the refugees he claimed to protect. Cirith withdrew, spending hours in the cargo bay running combat sequences with mechanical intensity, her bioluminescent markings pulsing in rapid patterns. Ethan buried himself in maintenance work he didn't need to do. Vessel broke the stalemate by playing increasingly obvious romantic music until Ethan threatened to wipe its personality core. Someone has to acknowledge what's happening between you, the AI responded dryly. 2 days from refuge, Ethan found Cirith staring at navigation charts, tracing the route to Kethran border zones. Part of me wants to go back, she said, to face execution with honor rather than live as an exile. Do you believe mercy is weakness like they taught you? She hesitated. He took her hand and pressed it against his chest so she could feel his heartbeat. You chose mercy over orders. That makes you the strongest person I've ever met. She leaned into him, forehead resting against his shoulder, crimson hair falling forward. They stayed that way until Vessel's alert shattered the moment. Detecting encrypted data packets transmitting from our systems to an unknown receiver. Ethan's blood went cold. Source? Navigation computer, salvaged components. Cirith moved to the console, fingers flying across controls. Kethran military encryption. Vekar has been tracking us since the first repair. The betrayal was accidental but complete. Ethan's attempt to save her had led her hunters directly to them. He made an emergency transmission to refuge station, warning them about incoming Kethran hunters and begging them to block Marwick's mercenaries from accessing traffic data. A woman's voice responded, tight with fear. This is Dr. Helena Voss, Xenobiology Division. There's an abandoned mining facility on the station's edge, coordinates transmitting now. I can arrange discreet medical care and forge documentation, but you need to get here before either fleet arrives. The facility was barely functional when they docked, heat failing and life support intermittent. As they huddled together for warmth in the control room, Cirith's body pressed against his. Ethan felt her trembling. I am afraid, she said quietly, not of dying, of having dragged you into death with me. He turned to face her in the darkness. What do you want, if you could choose anything without honor or duty or species expectations? I want to wake up next to someone who doesn't flinch when I move, who sees me instead of the weapon I was trained to be. He kissed her then, tentative because he'd never kissed anyone with lips like hers, his mouth finding the corner of her dark lips. Her breath caught in surprise before she wrapped her arms around him with desperate gentleness, terrified of hurting him even now. They held each other while the facility's heating system coughed and failed around them, neither speaking, both understanding this might be their only chance. Dr. Voss arrived hours later, thin and pale, with graying blonde hair. Her hands shook as she approached Cirith, professional curiosity barely overcoming obvious terror. She carried supplies and devastating news. Marwick discovered your deception. She seized 3 refugee ships, threatening to execute everyone aboard unless the station surrenders Cirith within 12 hours. Voss's voice cracked. Vekar has broadcast a challenge on all Kethran frequencies, declaring Cirith honorless. Even the station's Kethran exiles won't risk protecting her. Ethan watched Cirith's expression close off, walls rebuilding. She was already planning to surrender herself. No, he stepped between her and the door. Strategic sacrifice is basic military doctrine. I don't give a damn about doctrine. I love you, and if you walk out that door, I'm following. The word stopped her. Kethrans do not have that word. Explain what love means in human terms. It means choosing your life over my own, over logic, over a galaxy that keeps insisting you're a monster. Cirith broke then, rigid control crumbling. I do not know how to be anything other than a weapon. I do not know if I can learn to live instead of just survive. Ethan cupped her face in his hands. We'll figure it out together. I'm not asking you to be human, just asking you to stop believing you're worthless. She was quiet for a long moment, then spoke about ritual scars Kethrans carved when bonding to a mate. Permanent commitment marks. Would you accept that kind of claim? He rolled up his sleeve and handed her his utility knife without hesitation. She made a single careful cut along his forearm, pressing her palm against his bleeding skin. Her voice dropped into her language, the sounds harsh and beautiful, telling him he belonged to her as she belonged to him. Dr. Voss provided them with a modified shuttle and supplies to reach the outer reaches, unmapped regions where neither human nor Kethran authority held sway. Her hands still trembled, but her voice was steady. I've spoofed the shuttle's signature to make it appear you've jumped to Kethran space. It might buy you minutes, maybe an hour if you're lucky. Why are you helping us? Cirith asked. Voss met her golden eyes. Because I'm tired of being afraid. And because what you did at New Bellum saved my brother's family. With 8 hours remaining before Marwick's deadline, they executed their desperate plan. Ethan broadcast a distress signal claiming engine failure, while Cirith positioned herself visibly in the Perchance's cockpit. The Kethran ships took the bait, breaking formation to surround the vessel, while vessel remotely piloted through evasion patterns. Vecker himself hailed their ship, his midnight blue face filling the screen. Ritual scarring marked his shoulders, horns thicker and more aggressive than Cirith's. Surrender immediately and die with honor. Cirith transmitted the full record of the New Bellum mutiny to every ship in range, proof she'd defied orders that would have killed thousands. Chaos erupted on the Kethran command channel. Several voices questioned whether Cirith's actions were truly dishonorable. Vekkar tried to suppress the dissent, but Cirith had weaponized their honor code against them. She challenged him directly, claiming he'd abandoned her to avoid admitting his orders were unjust, demanding ritual combat to restore her name. The challenge was legally binding. Vekkar had no choice but to board the Perchance alone to face her. While Vekkar was isolated on their ship, Marwick's mercenary fleet emerged from FTL, immediately targeting the Kethran ships. The mercenaries assumed Ethan had betrayed Cirith, creating a three-way standoff where everyone believed everyone else was the enemy. Ethan remotely triggered the Perchance's reactor breach early, catching Vekkar and 2 pursuing ships in the blast radius. Simultaneously, Cirith hacked Marwick's communication systems and broadcast the bounty contract's fine print, proof the corporation funding the hunt planned to vivisect any captured Kethran for bioweapon research. The revelation fractured the mercenary fleet. Some ships withdrew, while others pressed the attack. In the chaos, Ethan and Cirith made their run for the outer reaches, their small shuttle straining under full burn, while Marwick's flagship pursued. Dr. Voss's spoofed signature worked. Marwick reoriented her pursuit, buying precious seconds. Ethan plotted a jump without proper calculations, trusting instincts and the stellar current navigation Cirith had taught him. They tumbled into FTL half a second before weapons lock achieved firing solution. They emerged in uncharted space, systems damaged and fuel critically low, but alive and finally alone. Cirith used her superior vision to spot a derelict platform orbiting a gas giant, and they limped toward it. As they drifted closer, Ethan asked if she regretted any of it. She took his scarred hand in hers, bioluminescent markings pulsing gently. Regret is useless. I would make every choice again to end up here with you. The derelict platform hung in orbit around a gas giant, ancient and forgotten. Ethan guided their damaged shuttle into the docking bay, atmosphere processors coughing to life as the station's emergency systems recognized incoming life signs. The place had been abandoned for decades, left behind when the mining corporations exhausted the resources and moved on. Cirith moved through the corridors beside him, her hand resting lightly on his shoulder for guidance in the darkness, until he found the power junction. When the lights flickered on, they revealed a facility that was structurally sound but desperately neglected. Supply caches remained from the last cruise, emergency rations and basic equipment covered in dust. "It will suffice," Cirith said, examining the environmental controls. "The atmospheric processors are functional. Water recyclers need repair, but the components are accessible." "Home sweet home." Ethan's voice carried exhaustion and relief in equal measure. They spent the first week making it livable, patching hull breaches with materials salvaged from their shuttle, restoring power to critical systems, clearing debris from living quarters. The work was familiar now, their coordination effortless. Ethan would start reaching for a tool and find Cirith already handing it to him. She'd begin explaining a technical problem, and he'd finish her thought. At night, they slept pressed together for warmth in the quarters they'd claimed as their own. The platform's heating remained unreliable, and neither mentioned that they'd stopped sleeping apart even after the temperature stabilized. Cirith taught Ethan the proper pronunciation of her name in her language, a sound that included a harmonic he couldn't quite reproduce no matter how many times he tried. Her laughter when he failed was genuine delight, something he'd never heard from her before. The sound transformed her face, softening the warrior angles into something almost human. He carved their names into the bulkhead of their quarters with his utility knife, marking this space as theirs. She added the Kethran bonding symbol beside it, her luminous eyes reflecting the flickering lights as she traced the pattern with careful precision. "This means chosen," she explained, "not assigned by breeding contract or military necessity, chosen freely." "I like that better than married anyway." Weeks bled into months. They established routines that felt like building a life rather than just surviving. Ethan set up a small greenhouse in one of the observation bays, coaxing vegetables from seeds they'd found in the supply caches. Cirith watched him work with fascination, asking questions about why humans grew food when synthesized nutrients were more efficient. "My sister taught me," he said, carefully transplanting seedlings, "said there was something important about putting your hands in soil, about watching things grow. I didn't understand until after she was gone." Cirith knelt beside him, letting him guide her hands through the process. Her strength, so devastating in combat, became gentleness when handling the fragile plants. She learned to check them daily, monitoring growth with the same intensity she'd once applied to weapons maintenance. The communication equipment they'd salvaged let them monitor nearby space for potential threats. 3 months into their exile, an encrypted message arrived from Dr. Voss. Marwick had been prosecuted for attempting to violate interspecies protection treaties, her corporate backers exposed and facing sanctions. Vecker's death had created political crisis in Kethron space regarding honor system reforms. The new Bellum recording had been broadcast across the sector, with some calling Cirith a hero, while others still named her traitor. Neither of them mentioned going back. Ethan set up a small workshop in one of the cargo bays, repairing salvage they'd brought from the Perchants. Old habits died hard, and the familiar work kept his hands busy. Cirith would sit nearby, practicing human handwriting with painful concentration. She'd found books in the supply caches, technical manuals mostly, but also a few personal items left by previous crews. She copied passages carefully, asking him about words she didn't understand. "Why do humans write stories?" she asked one evening, her stylus pausing over a datapad. "Kethrans record tactical data and mission reports, but these narratives serve no strategic purpose. They help us understand each other, make us feel less alone." He glanced at the passage she was copying, something from an old Earth novel about sailing ships. Sometimes a story is the only way to explain what it feels like to be human. She considered this, then resumed writing. "I am learning what it feels like to be something other than what I was designed to be." The gas giant's aurora became their evening ritual. They'd go to the observation deck after the day's work, watching the charged particles dance across the planet's magnetic field in ribbons of green and violet. Ethan would rest his head against her shoulder, while her fingers threaded through his hair, both of them comfortable in silence. "Kethrons have no word for contentment," she said one evening, her voice soft. "We have words for satisfaction in victory, for the calm before battle, for the efficiency of completed objectives, but not for this." "What do you call this?" She was quiet for a moment, searching for language. "There is a phrase we use for equipment that functions perfectly, settled into purpose. I believe that is what I feel, like I have finally settled into my purpose." "Which is?" "Being here with you." Ethan turned to look at her, the aurora painting her blue-gray skin in shifting colors. Her golden eyes caught the light, luminous in the darkness. "That's called being happy." "Then I am learning to be happy." Months became a year. The greenhouse flourished, providing fresh food that made Cirith wrinkle her nose at first, before admitting she preferred it to rations. The water recyclers ran smoothly. They'd mapped the entire platform, claiming sections as their own and marking them with small touches. A repaired viewport here, organized storage there, the quarters where they slept tangled together every night. Ethan taught Cirith how to cook simple meals, laughing when she approached it with military precision. She taught him Kethron hand-to-hand combat, moving through forms together in the cargo bay. The contact was necessary for the training, but they both knew it had become something else, an excuse to touch, to test the boundaries of trust and desire. One evening, after a particularly intense training session, they stayed on the cargo bay floor, breathing hard. Sweat made his shirt stick to his back. Her bioluminescent markings pulsed rapidly. The pattern he'd learned meant exertion or strong emotion. "I never thought I would have this," she said, staring at the ceiling. "A place that is mine. A person who is mine." "Ours," he corrected. "The place is ours, we're each other's." She rolled onto her side to face him, propping herself up on one elbow. "Your language is inefficient, but occasionally precise." "Is that a compliment?" "Yes." She leaned down and kissed him, no longer tentative. Her lips were warm against his, her hand cupping his face with the careful control that always made his chest tight. When she pulled back, she smiled. A real smile, not the careful expression she'd worn when they first met. "I love you," she said, the human words still strange in her mouth. "I have learned what this means, and I feel it." Ethan pulled her down beside him, her head resting against his chest. Through the viewport, the gas giant's aurora continued its endless dance, painting their refuge in light. "I love you too," he said, "and I wouldn't change a damn thing." They lay there together as the platform hummed around them, two exiles who'd found something the galaxy had tried to deny them. Not integration into either society, not acceptance from their respective species, but something simpler and infinitely more valuable, each other, and the freedom to build whatever came next. In the unmapped space between stars, where no one could tell them what they were supposed to be, they'd finally found home.